China will ship you a finished pair of prescription glasses for $8, and it is breaking a monopoly worth $26 billion a year. The same kind of glasses cost $250 at the mall. One company set that price, and it set it because it owns almost everything. It makes the glasses. It owns the stores that sell them. It owns the lenses inside them. It even owns the insurance plan that pays for them. For 60 years, that machine controlled what 4.5 billion people paid to see. But a city in China you have never heard of now makes half the lenses on Earth, and it is selling them straight to your door for the price of a sandwich. The $8 pair and the $250 pair can come out of the same factory. This is the story of the most complete monopoly in consumer goods. The orphan from Milan who built it, and the small Chinese city quietly taking it apart. To understand how the $8 pair and the $200 pair ended up so far apart, you first need the man who built the wall between them. Because he built it on purpose, one piece at a time. Leonardo Del Vecchio was born in Milan in 1935. His father died before he was born. His mother could not feed all her children, so she placed him in an orphanage, and that is where he grew up. No money, no connections, no family name to open a single door. At 14, he went to work for a tool and die maker, a workshop that cuts and shapes metal parts by hand. He learned precision. He learned how to build a mold so exact that 1,000 parts come out identical. It was unglamorous work, but it handed him a skill almost nobody else in eyewear had. In 1961, at 26, he opened a small workshop in Agordo, a town in the Italian mountains surrounded by not much at all. He did not make glasses. He made parts. Hinges, temples, nose pads. The little components he sold to the companies who did make glasses. A handful of employees. Nobody outside the valley knew the place existed. He was not a businessman in a suit. He was a craftsman who knew every mold and every press in the shop by hand. But Del Vecchio had noticed something the rest of the industry would take decades to feel. The margins on eyewear components were not good. They were absurd. A few cents of metal sold for many times that, over and over, forever. Because everyone needs glasses, and nobody thinks to ask what they cost to make. So he climbed. First, he made parts, then the whole frame, then frames under his own name. Then he stopped making other people's brands and started buying them outright. He called the company Luxottica, and he ran it like a man who had grown up with zero control over his own life and had decided he would never feel that way again. That is not a nice origin story. That is the blueprint for everything that came next. Because the next move was not building, it was swallowing. And the acquisition that shows exactly how the machine worked might be the ugliest one in the whole story. We will get to it. First, the buying spree. In 1990, Del Vecchio listed Luxottica on the New York Stock Exchange. Not Milan, not Rome, New York. Because that is where the money was, and America was the biggest eyewear market on Earth. He said at the time that if you have to sail, you choose the big C. Then, he went shopping with the cash. In 1995, he took over the company that owned LensCrafters, a hostile takeover of a US corporation several times Luxottica's size, just to get its optical retail chain. In 2001, he bought Sunglass Hut, the biggest sunglasses chain in the world. Now, he owned the shelves. And in 1999, he bought Ray-Ban for $640 million, part of the Bausch & Lomb sunglass business. At the time, Ray-Ban was a wreck. The frames were flimsy, the quality was gone, and Wayfarers were selling for $19 in gas stations. Analysts thought he overpaid for a dying brand. He knew exactly what he was going to do with it. He pulled Ray-Ban out of the gas stations overnight. He raised the price. He put it in Sunglass Hut, which he owned, and in LensCrafters, which he also owned, and he sold it as a premium product. The lens did not change. The frame barely changed. The only thing that changed was who owned the brand and what they decided to charge. By 2014, Ray-Ban was pulling in over 2 billion euros a year for Luxottica. Now, the ugly one. In the early 2000s, Oakley was one of the biggest eyewear brands in the world. Athletes loved it. It was independent, it was thriving, and it was selling extremely well inside Sunglass Hut, the store Luxottica owned. Then, Oakley got into a pricing fight with Luxottica, and Luxottica pulled Oakley off the Sunglass Hut shelves. Overnight, Oakley lost access to the biggest specialty sunglasses retailer on the planet. Its stock price dropped by 1/3. A healthy company suddenly looked like it was in trouble. Not because its products got worse, not because people stopped wanting them, because one company controlled the shelf and decided to take them off it. And then, Luxottica bought Oakley. In 2007, with the stock still hammered from losing its most important store, Luxottica acquired Oakley for around $2 billion, $30 a share. Read that back. The company that owned the store, starved the brand, watched its stock collapse, and then bought it at a discount. The founder of Oakley had built that company from a garage, and he watched his life's work get absorbed into the machine he had been fighting. The moment the deal closed, Oakley went right back onto the Sunglass Hut shelves. The prices went up, business resumed. Except now, Luxottica owned both sides of every sale. That was not just a deal. It was a message to every other brand in eyewear. Fight us on price, and we will pull you off our shelves, watch you crater, and buy you for less than you were worth. Nobody challenged them on pricing after that. But owning the brands and the stores was only 2 walls of the box. There was a 3rd wall coming, and it is the one that turns this from a business into something closer to a trap. If this kind of story is your thing, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps the channel keep going, and these take real work to put together. Subscribe so you are here for the next one, because what is coming up is honestly hard to believe until you see who signs your insurance check. First, the logos. After Oakley, Luxottica added licensing deals with nearly every fashion house that wanted its name on eyewear without doing the work of designing or making it. Chanel, Prada, Versace, Armani, Burberry, Ralph Lauren, Tiffany. Every deal worked the same way. The fashion house lends its name. Luxottica designs the frame, manufactures it, ships it, and sells it in its own stores. The fashion house collects a royalty check, and you pay $350 for a frame that rolled off the same line as an $80 pair 2 shelves below it. The only real difference is the name stamped on the arm. Then, in 2018, Luxottica merged with Essilor, the largest lens maker in the world. Now one company, EssilorLuxottica, controlled the frames and the lenses. The brands, the factories, the stores, and the lens technology. All of it. And then there is the part that gets left out of the story entirely. The part that makes the whole thing feel less like a market and more like a closed loop. They own EyeMed, the 2nd largest vision care insurer in the United States. Tens of millions of members. Sit with what that means. You go to your eye doctor. They tell you your insurance covers frames up to a certain amount at participating retailers. But the company paying for the frame, the store selling you the frame, and the company that manufactured the frame can all be the same entity. They write the insurance benefit that steers you toward the store they own to buy the product they made at the price they set. At no point in that entire journey are you standing in a competitive market. Every single step was designed by the same company. Try to picture this anywhere else. Imagine Ford owned every dealership in America, built every car on the road, ran one of the biggest auto insurers, and set every price with no rival brand on the lot. People would call that a national scandal. In eyewear, most people do not even know it is happening. By the time Leonardo Del Vecchio died in 2022 at 87, the orphan from Milan was one of the richest people in Italy. The machine kept running without him. 26 billion euros a year, more than a fifth of a global eyewear market worth around 120 billion. And it would still be running, untouchable, permanent, if not for that city in eastern China, the one making the $8 glasses. Danyang is a small city in Jiangsu province, about 2 hours west of Shanghai by high-speed train. Under 1 million people, surrounded by farmland and light industry. If someone showed it to you on a map, you would have no reason to look twice. But Danyang has a nickname, the glasses capital of the world. And once you hear the numbers, the nickname stops sounding like a boast. This one city produces more than 400 million spectacle lenses every year, roughly half of every lens made on the planet, and about 3/4 of every lens made in China. Half of all the corrective lenses in the world, for every brand, in every country, come from one city of fewer than 1 million people. It makes over 100 million frames on top of that, about a third of China's total. More than 1,600 eyewear companies packed into one place. Over 50,000 workers. Around $2.5 billion in annual output, and hundreds of millions in exports that keep climbing year after year, even when the rest of the economy stalls. Say those numbers slowly. Half the lenses on Earth? From a city you could not find on a map an hour ago. That is the quiet center of an entire global industry. And the industry it feeds has spent decades pretending it did not exist. Here is where it gets interesting, because the quality is not what you would assume. The industry started here almost by accident. In the 1960s, educated young people who had worked in Shanghai lens factories were sent to the countryside during a period of upheaval. They arrived in Danyang with nothing but the technical skill in their hands. Small workshops appeared. People who knew how to grind glass taught their neighbors. The neighbors taught their families. By the 1980s, a whole cottage industry had formed around lenses. At first, the equipment was basic and the quality was all over the place. Cheap lenses, nothing more. But through the 1990s and 2000s, Danyang transformed. The local government built industrial parks. Manufacturers bought precision grinding gear and coating machines that matched the factories in Germany and Japan. They partnered with universities. In 2014, a Danyang company built China's first domestic lens coating machine, breaking a foreign lock on the exact equipment that applies the anti-reflective and scratch-resistant coatings modern lenses need. That lock had belonged to Germany, Japan, and South Korea. Danyang broke it. So today, Danyang does not just make cheap lenses. It makes lenses with the same multi-layer coatings, the same blue light filtering, the same UV protection, and the same precision the expensive brands advertise as premium features. Independent testing has shown Danyang lenses matching or beating the optical specs of brands that cost 10 to 20 times more. And here is the detail that ties the whole story together. Some of the factories making lenses for Chinese brands also make the lenses that end up inside frames sold under European and American names in Western optical chains. Different box, different logo, same lens. Which means the $250 Ray-Ban and the $8 online pair can come out of the same city, maybe the same industrial park, possibly the same machine run by the same workers using the same raw materials. The factory does not care whose logo goes on the frame. It sells lenses, millions of them, to whoever places the order. Its margin is roughly the same whether that lens ends up in a $300 frame or an $8 one. The only thing that changes is how much you pay at the other end. You are not paying the extra $200 for a better lens. You are paying it for a logo, a store with flattering lighting, and a monopoly that has been raising prices for 60 years because nobody made it stop. Now, one city making the lenses does not break the monopoly by itself. The monopoly lived in the distance between that factory and your face. So the last piece of this story is the companies that closed that distance and turned Danyang's lenses into the $8 pair on your doorstep. Zenni Optical understood this before almost anyone. Founded in 2003, one simple idea that cut straight through 60 years of manufactured scarcity. Buy lenses and frames directly from the Chinese factories. Put them on a website. Ship prescription glasses straight to the customer. No stores paying rent, no fashion house royalty, no Luxottica markup sitting in the middle. A pair of prescription glasses on Zenni starts at $6.95. Full lenses, anti-reflective coating, a frame. The average pair runs just over $40, and Zenni has now sold more than 50 million pairs. That is not a niche site in the margins. That is a mass market competitor that exists entirely because the factory can ship straight to the person who wears the glasses. Warby Parker came at it from the American side. The founder forgot his glasses on a trip and went to replace them. The optician quoted him around $700, and he stood there thinking about the fact that the smartphone in his pocket, a computer with a camera and GPS and a screen, had cost him less than 2 bent pieces of plastic and glass. So in 2010, he helped launch Warby Parker, selling prescription glasses online for $95. The company grew past 140 stores and went public with a multi-billion-dollar valuation. Warby Parker did not end the monopoly, but it proved the thing that matters. People will switch the moment somebody hands them a real alternative at a price that does not feel like robbery. And the numbers are moving. A decade ago, a tiny sliver of prescription glasses in the US were bought online. Today, it is many times that, and higher still among younger buyers who never absorbed the belief that glasses have to be expensive. Every pair sold at $8 instead of $250 is a crack in the wall. EssilorLuxottica is not going bankrupt tomorrow. It still pulls in 26 billion euros a year. It is still the most powerful company in eyewear by a staggering margin. But this is the same pattern that has played out every time a monopoly meets the internet and cheap manufacturing at the same moment. The music industry thought piracy was a phase. The taxi companies thought ride-hailing was a gimmick. The bookstores thought Amazon was a novelty. The incumbent always believes the disruption stays in the margins. It never does. So go back to where we started. The 2 pairs of glasses. The one at the mall for $250, and the one from a Chinese factory for $8, that might carry a lens from the very same city. You now know the frame costs a few dollars to make. You know one company owns the brand, the store, the lens, and maybe your insurance plan, and pulls 26 billion euros a year doing it. You know an orphan from Milan built the most complete monopoly in consumer goods, and most people never noticed they were inside it. And you know a city in China you had never heard of an hour ago makes half the lenses on Earth, and will sell you a pair for the price of a coffee. You can buy the $250 pair anyway, because they look good and you can afford it. That is a real choice. But it is finally a choice, instead of the only option on the shelf. 4.5 billion people need glasses. That is more than half the human race. For 60 years, a huge share of them paid a price set by one company that made, sold, and insured the product from end to end. The answer to why it costs so much was never the glass. It was that one company decided it should. And until $8 glasses started showing up in the mail, nobody could make them stop. If this changed how you look at something sitting on your face right now, give it a like and subscribe for more videos about the monopolies quietly running your life. Turn on notifications so you never miss one. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Now that you know the $8 pair and the $250 pair can come from the same factory, which one are you buying next? And does the logo still win?